Ethan loved old libraries, not because he spent every spare moment reading, but because they felt different from the rest of the world. They seemed untouched by the constant rush of modern life. Every Saturday morning he visited the same library near his apartment, an old stone building tucked away on a quiet side street. The place smelled faintly of dust and paper, and its wooden shelves stretched almost to the ceiling. Most visitors were elderly regulars who nodded politely to one another without speaking. It was the sort of place where time seemed to move more slowly. One rainy Saturday, while wandering through a section he rarely visited, Ethan noticed a dark blue book standing between two history volumes. It immediately caught his attention because it looked strangely plain. There was no title on the spine, no author's name on the cover, and no library sticker anywhere on it. Curious, he pulled it from the shelf and opened it. The first page contained only a single handwritten sentence. Some stories prefer their own ending. Every page after that appeared completely blank. He flipped through the entire book, checking twice to make sure he wasn't missing something, but there was nothing there. Normally he would have put it back immediately, yet something about the book made him hesitate. It felt less like an unfinished object and more like a question. When he reached the front desk, the elderly librarian looked at the book for a moment before scanning it. Her expression changed ever so slightly, as though she recognized it. "You can borrow that one if you'd like," she said. The comment seemed harmless, but for some reason Ethan remembered it later. That evening he made himself a cup of coffee and settled into his favorite chair beside the window. It was still raining. Rain tapped softly against the glass while he opened the book again. The moment he looked at the pages, his stomach tightened. They were no longer blank. Lines of text filled the first chapter. Convinced he must somehow have overlooked them earlier, he turned back to the beginning and started reading. The story followed a man named Daniel, who lived alone in an apartment, worked in an accounting office, and visited the same cafe every morning before work. At first Ethan smiled at the coincidence. Then the details became increasingly specific. Daniel's apartment looked exactly like his own. Daniel took the same route to work. Daniel even had the habit of reading late into the night whenever he couldn't sleep. As the evening went on, the feeling of coincidence slowly disappeared. The story wasn't merely similar to Ethan's life, it was his life. Every chapter seemed to mirror events he had experienced. By midnight he reached the final pages. There Daniel discovered a strange blue book in an old library, and the chapter ended abruptly. Beyond it, the remaining pages were blank once more. The next morning, Ethan returned to the library. He felt slightly foolish, explaining the situation, but the librarian listened without interrupting. When he finished, she took the book from his hands, scanned it and placed it on a return card. "Leave it here," she said. "Someone else will borrow it eventually." Her answer felt strangely rehearsed, as though she had said the exact same thing many times before. Ethan wanted to ask more questions, but something about her expression discouraged him. Over the next few days, he tried to forget about the book. Work was busy, the weather improved, and gradually the entire experience began to feel less important. By Monday morning, he had almost convinced himself that he had imagined most of it. Then he walked into his kitchen and stopped. The blue book lay in the exact center of the table, not near the edge, not half hidden beneath a newspaper, but perfectly centered, as though someone had carefully placed it there. But Ethan lived alone, and no one else had a key. The doors and windows had remained locked all weekend. Slowly he approached the table and picked up the book. It was unquestionably the same one, the same dark blue cover, the same handwritten sentence on the first page. Within an hour he was back at the library. This time the librarian didn't seem surprised to see him. Without saying a word, she opened a drawer behind the desk and removed an old black and white photograph. 3 people stood outside the library entrance. One of them held a dark blue book. Ethan stared at the image. The man holding the book looked exactly like him. Not vaguely similar, but exactly. Not someone who merely resembled him, but it was exactly like him. The same eyes, the same face, even the same thoughtful expression. He turned the photograph over. On the back was a date written in faded pencil, October 14th, 1971. "Who is he?" Ethan asked quietly. "We never found out," the librarian replied. The answer only deepened the mystery. What happened to him? The woman looked forward the shelves before answering. The same thing that happens to everyone who finds the book. A long silence followed. Finally, Ethan asked the question he had been avoiding. How many people have found it? The librarian considered the question for a moment. 7, she said, including you. Ethan looked down at the book, resting between them on the desk. It suddenly felt heavier than before, not physically heavy, but more important somehow. Almost as though it had been waiting for him. Reluctantly, he opened it again, and the pages were no longer blank. A new chapter had appeared. The first sentence read, "Ethan left the library at 11:43 a.m., carrying the book under his arm." A chill spread through him. Slowly he glanced at his watch. 11:43. For several seconds he simply stared at the page. Then he turned to the next one. A second sentence had appeared. He told himself he would stop reading after one more chapter. Ethan closed the book immediately. Outside, rain drifted against the old windows. The library seemed quieter than ever, as though the entire building were holding its breath. Several minutes passed before he finally looked down at the cover again. Then, despite everything he had seen, despite every instinct telling him to leave the book behind, he opened it one final time, and a third sentence had appeared. He needed to know how the story ended. And what frightened him most was the simple fact that it was true. Deep down, he already knew that no matter what the next page contained, he was going to keep reading.